Mohammed Salah was sitting in the airport departure lounge waiting for his flight to Liverpool. The Egyptian star had spent a few days resting in his homeland and was now returning to England to resume training with his team. With a cap pulled low over his forehead and discreet headphones in his ears, Salah waited patiently, trying to go unnoticed. He never cared much about fame, but he knew that in a busy place like this, he could be recognized at any moment. The airport was crowded. People hurried to their boarding gates, airline staff made announcements over the loudspeakers, and families tried to stay calm while waiting for their flights. It was a typical scene in an international terminal where stories crossed paths every second. Salah watched the movement around him absent-mindedly when something caught his attention. A little to his right, a young man, around 17 or 18 years old, was speaking to his mother in a harsh tone. He was wearing designer clothes, holding an expensive smartphone, and looked impatient. The woman, with tired features and a distressed expression, was trying to calm him down, but the boy didn't seem willing to listen. "I already told you I don't want to hear your voice anymore," he exclaimed, raising his hand as if in frustration. "You only know how to complain." Salah frowned. The boy's mother, a middle-aged woman with a carefully adjusted headscarf, took a step back, clearly embarrassed by her son's attitude. "My son, I was just saying you should eat something before the flight. You've gone the whole day without eating." "I already said I'm fine. Stop acting like I'm a child." The boy's rude tone made some people nearby turn to look in their direction. The mother, not knowing what else to do, sighed and lowered her gaze. Salah could see how hurt she was. He felt a pang in his chest. How could someone treat their own mother that way? Especially a mother who clearly cared about her child's well-being. He kept watching for a few more minutes, trying to understand the situation. The boy went back to scrolling through his phone, completely ignoring his mother beside him. She, on the other hand, seemed small and vulnerable, gripping the strap of her purse as if seeking some kind of silent support. That's when Salah made a decision. He couldn't just sit there and do nothing. It wasn't about interfering in a stranger's life, but about a fundamental principle he carried with him: respect for parents, especially mothers. Without hesitation, he stood up and walked toward the young man. He wasn't sure exactly how he would approach the situation, but he trusted he would find the right words. After all, that boy had no idea he was about to receive an unforgettable lesson. Salah approached with firm but calm steps. He didn't want to intimidate the boy, only make him reflect on his attitude. When he got closer, he lightly tapped the young man's shoulder. The boy turned to him with a mix of irritation and surprise. "Excuse me for interrupting," Salah said in a calm but firm tone, "but I was sitting over there and heard part of your conversation." The boy frowned. "So what? This isn't your business." Salah could tell the young man was on the defensive. That was expected. He probably wasn't used to being confronted. The player then looked at the boy's mother, who seemed embarrassed by the situation. "I understand that you might be irritated or stressed," Salah continued, keeping his voice steady. "Traveling can be exhausting, and sometimes we say things without thinking. But do you realize what you're doing?" The boy scoffed, crossing his arms. "You don't even know me. You don't know anything." "You're right. I don't know anything about you. But I do know something about mothers," Salah said, offering a small smile. "I know how much they do for us, often without us noticing. I know that every concern, every piece of advice, even every scolding comes from love. You might not see it now, but one day you'll understand how valuable that is." The young man glanced at his mother, who remained silent. He didn't respond immediately, but his face showed signs of contemplation. Salah noticed this shift and continued. "My mother used to insist that I eat before leaving home too. I thought it was unnecessary, sometimes even annoying. But you know what would happen? Every time I didn't listen, I regretted it later. The truth is, mothers know more than we think." The boy averted his eyes, visibly uncomfortable. He still had no idea who was talking to him. To him, Salah was just an intrusive stranger. "Okay, but why do you care?" he asked, his arrogance fading slightly, though he still tried to maintain a defiant attitude. Salah took a step back, taking a deep breath before responding. Because I've seen many people who would give anything to have their mother by their side, to hear one last scolding, one last piece of advice, one last moment of concern. You still have that chance. Silence settled for a few seconds. The boy's mother had tears welling in her eyes, but she said nothing. She just watched her son, waiting for his reaction. The boy lowered his head slightly, fidgeting with his phone without really paying attention. Salah didn't push further. He knew he had planted a seed. Now it was up to the young man to decide what to do with it. The boy remained silent for a few moments, fiddling with his phone as if trying to distract himself. But something in those words had struck a chord. His expression, once filled with impatience and defiance, now seemed tense, almost hesitant. He glanced at his mother, who was still holding the strap of her bag tightly, as if it were her anchor. Salah didn't say anything else. He just stood there for a moment, observing, waiting to see if the boy would react. And he did. Without looking directly at his mother, the young man muttered, almost inaudibly, "Sorry." The woman blinked a few times, surprised. She hadn't expected that. Her son, who had spoken to her so coldly just moments ago, was now taking a step, however small, toward remorse. "What?" she asked, as if needing to confirm she had heard correctly. The boy raised his eyes and this time spoke a little louder. "I said I'm sorry, Mom." The relief on her face was immediate. It was a simple apology, but one filled with meaning. Salah watched the scene and knew it was time to step away. He didn't want to be the center of that moment. His role there was already fulfilled. As he took a step back, he felt a hand touch his arm. He turned and saw that it was the boy's mother. She looked at him with gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. Salah gave a small smile and shook his head. "No need to thank me. He just needed a reminder." The woman nodded, and Salah walked away, returning to his seat. He put his headphones back on but didn't turn them on. He just sat there watching discreetly. The boy now seemed different. It wasn't a drastic change, but he looked at his mother differently. After a few seconds, he put his phone in his pocket and hesitantly asked, "Do you want me to get you something to eat?" The woman smiled, surprised. "If you'd like, we can eat together," she suggested gently. The boy hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." They stood up and walked together toward the food court. Salah watched them disappear into the crowd, and for the first time that day, felt he had done something truly important, something beyond football. A short time later, his flight was called. He grabbed his carry-on bag and headed toward the boarding gate, certain that this unexpected encounter had made a difference in someone's life.